Tenho que trocar a apresentação, porque estamos a ver a vista do apresentador. Definições de monitor em cima.
Diga.
Definições de monitor e trocar. É a opção do meio, em cima.
Começamos? Well, good morning and welcome to our webinar from the Fire Risk Project on the integrated program of wildfire risk management, the case of Portugal. I welcome first of all our speakers and thank them for having accepted our invitation and our challenge to present this very interesting topic. And I'm going to give a brief introduction to the webinar. This is the fourth webinar that we organize in the context of Fire Risk Project. And in this case, it's on the topic of an integrated program of wildfire risk management. The speakers will be representatives of these 5 agencies that work in Portugal in the management of the wildfire risk. As you know, the project Fire Risk is a research program from the European Commission, funded by the European Commission project program, and we are dealing with the risk of fire in Europe. We are looking at all aspects of the risk management, prevention, mitigation, and recovery on a holistic way. So we have to look at all these aspects to see how we can assess risk, how we can reduce risk, and how we can adapt to future environments, to future conditions. The project consortium is quite large. We have 38 partners from 17 different countries, from many countries in Europe, but also from Canada and Australia. And we are in the project, we are committed to propose an integrated strategy to manage the risk of wildfires. This is an activity that is just starting, and it should be supported by our research activity in the risk assessment, risk reduction, and risk adaptation, to make Europe and the world and its communities more resilient to the risk of fire in the present and in the future. As part of our research, we have to analyze the existing strategies in different countries or regions to see what can be extracted, what we can learn from them, and propose eventually to other countries or regions, or even at the European level. We all know that in 2017, Portugal suffered a dramatic series of fire events with 216 fatalities. And these events triggered an extensive change of the risk perception on the population in general, and also induced the authorities to promote an extensive reform on the fire risk management. In 2018, I was part of an observatory from the General Assembly, the Technical Observatory for the Fires, and in a work that we did to assess what was the status of the process of fire management in Portugal, we draw this scheme. As you can see, there are many institutions, there are many links between them, and it's had a complicated diagram. It has to be complex because the problem that we are addressing is complex. Well, since then, things have changed a bit. There was, for example, an agency was created to manage the risk of fires in an integrated form, that is AGIF, as we know. And it's very important to note that this agency was dependent directly to the office of the Prime Minister. So politically, it had, let's say, great power and influence. This agency worked in connection with all departments of the government and other sectors of the society to produce an extensive legal and organizational reform, ending with the proposal of a national program of forest fire management. To look at this program and to look at these reforms, we invited for this webinar what we consider are the 5 main agencies. Of course, there are many others. There are many other institutions that are part of this fire management strategy. But we think that these 5 that are with us today will be best positioned to explain us what were the changes and to tell us what is their perspective about this common strategy that is being adopted in Portugal. What has changed in these 3 or 4 years since these reforms were started, or where we are and what needs to be improved or to be changed. As I mentioned, we have AGIF, who is the Agency for Integrated Management of Wildfires, that has somehow the overall coordination. We have the National Agency for Emergency and Civil Protection, who is in charge of fire suppression, operational coordination, civil protection, communities protection, and it deals overall with the firefighter system. We have the Institute for Nature Conservation and Forests that is in charge of forest regulation with laws and with fire prevention. We have the National Republican Guard that is in charge of many activities: law enforcement, sensibilization, fire cause investigation, fire suppression, and also fire detection. And finally, we have the Portuguese Institute of Sea and Atmosphere, who is what's called previously the Institute of Meteorology. They are in charge of risk evaluation and meteorological support. Okay, with further ado, I will present Mr. Arlindo Santos from the AGIF. Arlindo Santos is a mechanical engineer. He has a master's degree in mechanical engineering and also in technological entrepreneurship. Since March 2020, Arlindo is responsible for the Department of Knowledge and Innovation at the National Agency for Integrated Management of Wildfires. Okay, I give you the floor. Arlindo, I stop my presentation here, please.
Thank you, Professor Xavier Viegas. Let me just... Please confirm if you are...
If you allow me, just a minute, I forgot to tell the participants that during the presentations, you can put questions on writing in the question and answers box. And we will pick those questions and present them to the speakers at the end of each lecture or at the end of the webinar in the period of general debate. Okay, excuse me, please.
Okay, so thank you very much, Professor Xavier Viegas, and thank you for the invitation for being present here at this event. We at AGIF truly believe that this project is indeed very, very interesting, and we think that Europe needs to have a common approach to the strategy of dealing with wildfires. And of course, we want to present our case, our national case. Regarding the presentation, well, I will fly through the slides, and on the left side of the presentation, there are the key messages that I want to pass, and on the right, there are more detailed information that you can consult later. So I will not read in detail every slide. So first, well, for most of you know, of course, Portugal is a not very small, but a small country in Europe. But we have very diverse landscapes. and Portugal is very susceptible to forest fires, big wildfires, because of our land cover, because of our climate, land management, and indeed we have a fire culture in our population. So basically we have high rainfall during the winter. That means fuel accumulation during the wet months, and then we have a dry and hot summer. Of course, this builds up a fire hazard in our country, and we all know that because of climate changes, it is expected that this issue will be worse in the future. But we have Nuno Moreira from the Weather Service that will speak about this. I'm sure about it. As Professor Xavier Viegas said, after the tragic wildfires in 2017, several pain points were identified throughout the whole value chain of the wildland fire system, and there was an independent technical commission that highlighted these issues. I can name some of them. We have a lot of unmanaged fire landscapes, mainly because of the abandonment of rural areas. People that in the past were doing agriculture in these rural areas, are now old, they are dead, and we have young people moving to the big urban areas by the sea. There were also highlighted some issues regarding the system, the old system itself. There were unclear responsibilities in the system and a lack of forest fire expertise. So a lot of issues were highlighted, and of course we cannot solve these issues in a year, so this will take time, as I will say throughout this presentation. One of the recommendations of this technical commission was the need to have strategic coordination of the system, and as Professor also mentioned in his introduction, was the establishment of AGIF. Well, after the fires in 2017, people debated this issue, but there were some things that had to be done quickly in order to avoid another 2017. So there were some activities, and the engagement of the critical entities of the system. They are here present with us. And basically, most important thing was to protect people, reduce ignitions in Portugal, and reduce these ignitions mainly in those days that are where the risk is particularly high. There were also a lot of activities regarding fuel management in critical areas, and so there were a lot of activities that are a priority. And example, this year we had a dry winter, so these entities are engaged to perform these activities in order to avoid problems when the weather when we enter the hotter months. Second, there was the establishment of the national rural fire plan. It's a 10-year plan until 2030. I will speak about it later, and of course a lot of activities regarding communication to the population in order to avoid risk behaviors from the population. AGIF Ajif, so these are the main responsibilities from Ajif. Ajif is responsible for the planning part of the system, for the strategic coordination, and then also responsible for the assessment. So we monitor and we evaluate the integrated rural fire management system. Ajif also has responsibilities in integrate public policies focused on fuel accumulation, behavior of the population, and then actions of the agents that are part of the system. We also have responsibilities regarding knowledge management, and I could split this in two parts. First, we want to bring science to the operations, and we have a strategy together with a collab Forestwise. We also have responsibilities regarding the specialization and professionalization of the agents, and we are working on the national plan for training the agents. All these activities that I'm mentioning are always done in collaboration with the entities that are part of the system, and there are a lot of entities. We monitor and assess prevention and suppression activities. We are responsible for the drafting and monitoring of the national plan. We also support the entities during high-risk events, and well, this last one I would say is mainly the most important one. Ajif is the authority that should bring everyone together. This is what we are doing, and basically make sure that everyone is working towards this national goal, that is protect Portugal from severe rural fires. The national plan, the 10-year plan. So this is those are the main strategic guidelines that are mentioned in the plan, and the plan is well, it's translated, and I will share. You can consult this later with more detail. But well, we have four big strategic guidelines that we tackle in this national plan. So first, we want to value rural areas. I would say this is the main root cause of the problem. We have a lot of activities regarding active management of the rural areas. We need to change behaviors and, of course, do efficient risk management. So we can work in each one of these strategic guidelines. The activities that I mentioned before are mainly related to the efficient risk management, but in the long term, I would say the most important thing, and we need public policies to make this happen, is money should go into valuing rural areas, and this well would fuel this system, I would say, because with the higher value of the land, people will actively do management, fuel management in the territory. If they will earn money, they of course will change their behaviors and will try to engage other people to change their behaviors. So this is the best way to deal with this issue, but you can read this later on in the national plan that I will share with you all. Regarding entities that are part of the system, as Professor mentioned at the beginning, we have 5 here in this session, but there are a lot of entities involved. Those 5, I would say, are the core entities of the system, but we have others that are very important. I can name a few. Example, the armed forces. We have the national entity that is responsible for the territory and that provides critical information regarding our territory. We have the Ministry of Agriculture, we have local authorities, fire departments, all of them are part of the system and they are very, very important. Of course, landowners. The national plan is composed by three main layers. So it's the strategy itself, it's the process chain, and the national action program that is composed by 97 projects. The process chain, as you saw in the introduction, there are a lot of entities involved, so it is important to make sure that all these activities are organized. And now, well, the plan comprises 6 stages and 21 processes, so each stage has several processes in it. And processes are well defined, and basically what was done is we defined the responsibility of each entity in each activity and the way that all these entities are related with each other. There are also 3 enablers that are very important and that are transversal to all processes, namely the governance, qualification, and information and communication systems. Here we are also working on platforms that will bring different IT systems of all these entities together. So information sharing is, of course, very, very important. Regarding the operationalization of the national plan, well, there are several programs. I mentioned already the National Action Program, but this action program is also well, we are now together with all entities working on regional, sub-regional, and municipal programs. This approach is indeed new to the system, and it's now being implemented. So we have national goals, strategic objectives that, of course, are well, what define the activities on the ground, but well, we have a top-down, bottom-up approach because the implementation of the strategy will be done by people on the ground, by people that know the territory. So there are several committees on various levels that will well, plan the different activities on the territory to mitigate a wildfire risk. Well, what we did so far. So I have here several slides with some numbers. Main messages. We are trying to avoid the firefighting trap. So very important is starting to balance budget between suppression and prevention. And as you will see in the next few slides, we are now more balanced. So budget is increasing, but the prevention budget is increasing much more than the suppression budget. Then, as I said before, responsibilities are clarified. The system has 2 main dimensions. We have first the forest and fire management dimension. That is, well, we have ICNF with us. That is the entity that is responsible for this dimension. And we are speaking here mainly about firefighting with tools, fire doses supported by air, and then we have the dimension that is responsible for where we have the civil protection that is responsible for it, that is protecting people from severe events. And here people work with water pumps and defend the perimeter of homes, of villages. Some numbers. So fire events have been reduced by half since 2017. We duplicated the investment. We have now more knowledge supporting the operations, and we have great examples. I believe Civil Protection will speak about their efforts, their work in this area, also ICNF and all other entities, and the National Rural Fire Plan is going forward. On the left side, basically in the past, we had different entities, somehow isolated and working in silos. And what we are trying to achieve is put everyone together and work towards a common objective. AGIF's role here is important because, well, I would say AGIF is the only entity in the system that is only focused on wildfires. The other entities have also other obligations, and we are here to remind them, of course, that we have to work on this, because this is indeed a big problem in our country. Some examples of some activities that we are doing. In this case, the communication part that is coordinated by AGIF together with all the entities involved in the system. We have several campaigns to try to change behaviors. I can list a few examples. Theaters that we do in villages located in high risk areas. We have also private entities that are helping us to spread the word. We have a campaign for children, to engage children, and children also educate their parents. So there is a program in schools for children between 5 and 10 years old. There are some, there are a lot of activities. I can name also this is very important because the farmers work with fire since always, I would say, and together with the entities, we are trying to sensibilize them and to help them do the fires during low risk days, for them to have pastures for their animals. Another important area that we are working on is the international exchange program. So we are bringing experts to Portugal, and we are exporting people from AGIF, but also from the other entities that are involved in the system to other countries that also have this wildfire problem. So in the past, we worked with all those countries that are listed here in this image. For example, at the moment, we have projects with the United States. I take the opportunity to greet Michael, that is a Fulbright specialist that is currently working with us, and we are continuing to do this work. Regarding our strategy to bring science into operations, here we have a strategic partnership with Forestwise. Forestwise is a collaborative laboratory for forest and fire management, and we have a common strategy to bring, to identify main needs of the entities that work in this system, and try to build up innovation projects to give answer to those needs. Basically, we want to bring the system together with those research, development, and innovation partners. Well, I think with this contact between academia and with the system is good, because this also orients the research and development agenda of universities towards real problems of the system. Regarding the budget, as I said before, budget is increasing every year, but the balance, I would say, is achieved. So in 2017, we had 20% of the budget was allocated to prevention, only 20%, and in 2020 we already had 45% of the budget allocated to prevention. Well, and this is the objective is to continue this balancing act. But of course, we cannot cut budgets and suppression, because we know that the bigger fires are not going away, and we will have them in the future, so we need everyone prepared. Some numbers, and I'm sorry, but this slide is in Portuguese. Number of fires have been decreasing in the last years. Also, the total burnt area is low in the last years, as you can see in the top right image. You see 2017 was indeed a very bad year, but in the last years the total burnt area has been low. But there is still a lot of work to be done, and we are still very well dependent on weather conditions. So if the year is very bad, we can always work on trying to reduce ignitions, pre-position people on the ground, but if the fire starts, it will be difficult to hold the fire. Here are some goals. Well, these are the targets from the National Action Program. So by 2030, we want to be below 660,000 hectares of burnt area. We are already at 14% of this goal. We think we can achieve it. The number of fires in critical days had to be reduced by 5, and this is also going well. We also want to lower the percentage of fires that are bigger than 50 hectares a year. This number should be below 0.3% of total fires per season. Also, the loss of human lives is of course an important goal, and it should be a rare phenomena in this system. Well, just to finish, well, as I said at the beginning, we strongly believe that the results of this project will influence public policies on the EU level. And we believe that this work that we are doing in Portugal is important for you, for this consortium. Well, it would be nice if you see us as an example, because we want, and this is a project that is also mentioned in the National Action Program, we intend to contribute to a greater alignment between European and Portuguese practices, so that we speak a common language on European level. But the work that you are doing, we are always open to integrate best practices that you will identify in this project. Example of the commitment is the organization of the 8th International Wildland Fire Conference, where the integrated wildfire management is the central topic, and this event will be held in Oporto between the 16th and 19th of May 2023, and of course you are all invited to come to Portugal, come to Porto, and to speak with us. We translated some important documents, legal documents from the system. We can later on share this information, this presentation with Professor Xavier Viegas, that can then pass this to the consortium, no problem. And you can read the national plan in English. Unfortunately, not the National Action Program, it's in Portuguese, but I share it anyway. And then we have the decree law that came out, the year is wrong, it came out in 2021, and it's also translated, and this legal document establishes the integrated rural fire management system and defines its operating rules. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Erlindo, for this presentation. It was very clear and useful for all the audience. We have picked some questions. If I can pose to you at least two that we got. One comes from Mr. George Eftikidis from Greece. He is asking who is responsible to decide, to implement and to monitor, for example, the people evacuation during the fire, and what is the role of AGIF in this? If AGIF plays any role in the active firefighting operations. So this is one question. Another question was about the number of institutions. In my diagram in the introduction, I showed a lot of introduction of institutions, and then apparently we simplified it to 5, but you already clarified that we have much more institutions. So what is now the design of the system? Is it the same? Is there any, let's say, network that is created? So basically these are the questions.
Well, regarding the first questions, there are mainly questions for civil protection entity and not for AGIF. AGIF is, as I said, has a strategic function, and we don't have a role in firefighting operations. Not anymore. We had it in the past, when we had people that in severe events went out and helped in decision making, but we trained those people and we passed them to the National Forest Service, ICNF, that now has a big role also in the suppression part. So we don't have an active role in fire suppression. This is a role from the civil protection that Pedro Nunes will explain in the next presentation. The second question, Professor Xavier Viegas, was regarding the entities.
Yes, the entities. And actually some more questions have arisen about that. For example, what is the role of these 15 entities? And also if the Sendai framework regarding the protection of the communities is being addressed in this new program.
Regarding the role of all these entities. All entities have their role. You will hear about the role of the entities that are present in this session. But I can name a few. For example, the armed forces have a supporting role to help, for instance, the National Republican Guards doing surveillance and wildfire detection. They are helping also the civil protection during suppression by managing the aerial suppression means, airplanes. We have entities that are part of the agricultural ministry, because the agriculture is very important to prevent wildfires. So all activities that agriculture has in these rural areas, if they can attract farmers to high-risk areas, we are lowering the risk in those critical areas. So everyone has a role in this, and everyone is important.
Thank you very much, Arlindo. Well, we have to go on, and we are now moving to the next presentation, that is from the civil protection. And
thank you.
I would like to present the Commander Pedro Nunes. He is from the National Agency of Civil Protection. Let me remind all the participants that you can continue to ask your questions in the question and answer box, even for the previous speakers. If that's the case, please indicate the name of the person to whom you are addressing. Commander Pedro Nunes, he's graduated in civil protection engineering, and he has a master's degree in forest resources. His background is a firefighter. He was actually the commander of the Firefighter Corporation of Certain. And since 1990, he's working for the National Agency of Civil Protection, where he's now the National Assistant for the Operations Structure. Pedro Nunes, please. I invite you to give your presentation.
Okay, just a moment. We'll share my presentation.
Excellent. Okay.
I think it's okay right now. You can see it.
It's okay, Pedro.
It's okay?
Yes.
Okay, let's start. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the National Authority for Emergency and Civil Protection, I would like to welcome to the ADA initiative on behalf of Professor Xavier Viegas, and obviously welcome everyone present at this webinar. Well, the proposed challenge for this webinar was to address some of the tools or programs implemented in the national strategy after the tragic fires of 2017. Among numerous proposed recommendations, some strategic areas for the civil protection were defined. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about all of them, time is short, but I will give a small approach of two of them. The trigger, as you all know, was the tragic fires in 2017. The fatal fires occurred outside the critical period and caused an unprecedented number of victims, as Professor Xavier Viegas mentioned in the beginning. As a result, two independent commissions recommended structural changes to the government on several dimensions, such as changes in governance, so that risk could be managed in a different way, territory management also, national self-protection and a campaign for risk reduction, and another one was the implementation of a warning and alert system in a national scope. Among the different areas that were identified, as I told you before, I will briefly address two tools. And the tools that I'm going to abord is the new analysis and decision support platform for rural fires in the civil protection system, and the other tool that was also implemented according to the recommendations is the program Safe Village and also Safe People. So let's start with the first one. At this slide, we are in 2018. And the slide represents the changes we considered. Okay, so this was a problem for us once we were trying to develop, to create, to design a new support decision system, we think about new technologies, new equipments, how to incorporate the scientific knowledge that was available. And at the same time, we need to design a digital or a computer platform that could be able to compile all the available information and make it also available to all operators in a simple way. In 3 words, for us, it was very important that the new decision support system should be effectiveness, should be also to take the capacity to be shared, and should be simple. So this was the main problem for us. In the middle, we need to design the platform, and we start asking to ourselves, what can we do more about geographic information and remote sensing? How can we develop the system based on this issue? Okay, we also start using the fire weather index in a daily basis. Until this moment, we use mainly a tool from National Institute for Meteorology that I suppose Nuno will talk about it later on. But at this moment, we start also to use in a daily basis the fire weather index, okay? Well, we start to think how to improve the capacity of the coordination helicopters, and why not rent small aircrafts to collect information about the ongoing fires. Okay. The other idea that we had was related with how can we collect or how can we gather information on the ground, and so on and so on. Also, the new platform for us should be able to work on any device with no problems, starting on a singular smartphone. We also develop an internal analysis cell for rural fires, or if you want to call it, decision supporting cell. And of course, we start a process of internal development and training. So these were the main changes that we considered in 2018. as I told you, at this time, we implement in the National Command for Relief Operations a decision support cell that integrates specialists in meteorology and fire behavior analysis. This cell constantly monitors rural fires since their initial phase and signals those that have the biggest or the greatest potential for evolution. This cell works before, during, and after. Before, what do I mean? They work before with weather information, weather forecast information. They combine the weather forecast information with the fire weather index, and they produce some strategic analysis before the event or before the dry periods during the summer or even during the winter. The decision support cells works all the year. During the situations, what do? They produce operational and strategic information regarding the ongoing fires, okay? And also they have the capability at this moment to produce some simulations of the fire behavior. After the event, they produce some operational statistics, some reports, and some lessons learned also. During 3 years, the support system was subject to some changes, as I told you before. And today, it can be defined by the scheme. Quite different from the scheme that was implemented in 2017. With more solutions implemented based on a computer platform that it's here, okay? We call it FAB monitorization. That gathers all necessary operational information. And as I told you before, it's available 24 hours on any mobile device. So at the left side of the screen, we have the part that feed the platform. And on the right side of the slide, we have the users of the platform, okay? So what feeds at this moment the platform? Okay, operationals on the ground at this moment have the capability to collect or to gather information on the ground. We'll see later on how do they do this, okay? At this moment, both helicopters of coordination and we have 2 strategic aircrafts located to do just the gather of the information above the fires that are ongoing. And also the third part, they do not collect the information, but we inserted this information is the geo-referencing of their position on the ground. In 2017, we don't have this kind of information, okay? So these 3 parts feed the platform. The first ones, they feed using an ASRIP tool that is called Quick Capture. Okay, we continue, of course, it could be on another way using the geographic information. And who are the users of the platform? Of course, the decision support cell that makes some clinical adjustments at this time and provides some strategical information to support the decision of the civil protection and also the on-site commander and the operationals that are deployed on the field. Okay, basically, this is the new scheme of decisions of the decision support system that we use in 2022. In parallel, we are developing in partnership with the academy. In this case, it's with the University of Lisbon, a simulator for rural fire behavior, properly calibrated and adjusted to the Portuguese reality. We are at this moment in the final stage of testings, And I must tell you that the results so far have been very satisfactory for us. This simulator will allow to make possible to obtain the preferred propagation paths, the intensity levels developed. I'm talking about energy released, the propagation speed, the development rate, among others outputs. Okay. So we think that the simulator will allow us to make decisions in advance, which is very important. Who are the users of the platform? Of course, is everyone who is involved in the rural fires, such as fire departments, security forces, National Institute for Medical Emergency, armed forces, the forest services, and other public entities or private ones. Okay, and finally, the platform. I'm not going to talk about all the options. This is the work environment of the platform. It's very user friendly. No problem. You can see this is the part that support all the incoming information about videos, streamings, photos that are collected. This is the part where you can see the position of the grounds on the team, more specified. This is the information related with the ongoing fire and so on. This is the streaming. Okay, I cannot specify all the tools because time is short and we'll need all the morning to speak about this. Okay. But this is very user-friendly and all the options are easy to access regardless the device you are using, okay? And also the platform is updated annually according to the new needs, okay? And still continue to grow. As you can see, this is some images from the platform or from some information you can collect on the platform. The systems allows you to incorporate photos, videos that are coming from the recon planes or from the helicopters or from the teams on the ground. At the same time, allows you to draw the perimeter at the real time of the fire, identify areas that are active, and as already mentioned, it allows you to see the position of the teams on the ground. And you can see this is the fire perimeter that the ground teams are drawing. This is their position on the ground, and the black peaks is related with the information that part of the fire perimeter that is dominated, and the orange one is some parts that are hot or that are still active. Okay, these pictures blue. It's not related in this case with water, but it's related with pictures that are available from the fire. Okay, so this is one example of the fire. As you can see, this is the perimeter. Okay, it is more or less the same, and this is an infrared picture, which where you can see the hot spots or the fires, the parts of the fire that are active in this moment. This is another frame with a more complex fire, with a larger affected area, okay? But the information remains unchanged, and the system works the same way. Another picture in infrared mode, where you can see, I think this is a road or a river or something like that. This is the main corp of the fire, and as you can see, you have several spot fires on the left side of the picture. Extremely important information for the decision support cell when they produce the strategic analysis, and also for the on-site commander on the ground because he has this information in real time. Okay, this is the system working. This is the guy who is on the recon plane collecting and inserting information on the platform. And this is one guy of a ground team that is using the information on his vehicle with a simple pad. No more than that. As I told you, the system is very simple to use. This is a guy from the fire department collecting information on the ground with the quick capture tool. He has several options and he identifies the photo with the main front of the fire, some spot fires, some hot spots, some sensible points, water, and so on. And as, in the moment he takes the photo, it goes directly to the platform, and it will be accessible to everyone who is connected in the system. So on the left side, we have a photo of the room where the decision support cell works. These are the guys who works all the time analyzing the fire behavior and also producing the informations to support the on-site commander. And on the right side, we have a photo of a briefing held at the command post using, of course, FAB monitorization platform. Okay. So here you can see that it was a big improvement on the decision support system. So for 2022, we expect some evolutions on the platform, such as greater edition capabilities. As I told you, right now we use ArcGIS quick capture, but probably in the next update we will incorporate ArcGIS, some ArcGIS field maps with different options, and also ArcGIS tracker, essentially to collect the track of the ground means and also of the aerial means. So as I said at the beginning, the presentation will focus on two tools. The first one was the decision support system, and the second part I will address the Safe Village, Safe Program people. For those who are familiar with the FireSmart program used in Canada, this one is very similar. Okay. So what is the program Safe Village, Safe People? Well, it allows you essentially to establish structural measures for the protection of people and property, and also for buildings situated at the urban forest interface. Okay. It allows also to implement and manage buffer zones to protect clusters and strategic infrastructures. And at least it allows also to identify critical points and places of refuge or shelters also, okay? And what is the program Safe People? Okay, on the other end, I can tell you that Safe People seeks to teach and implement self-protection routines and decrease risky behavior among villagers. The main target for both programs, these are national programs, but the main objective is to reach the agglomerates and small villages located in parishes, identified as having a severe level of exposure to the rural fires. I must tell you at this moment that the list of priority parishes, probably João Pinho for the ICNF will talk about this. A list of priority parishes for fuel management is published annually by the ICNF, and this list, of course, is updated every year. As I mentioned before, these programs are nationally in scope, and any village that wants can implement them. However, priority should be given to villages located in priority parishes. So, who are the stakeholders, and in fact, who does what? National Civil Protection is responsible for preparing the program frameworks, as well as carrying out national awareness campaigns and also to develop alert systems. Due to their responsibilities in terms of civil protection, and also due to their great proximity to the citizens, parish councils will be responsible or are responsible for mobilizing local communities through strong relationships of trust that encourage the involvement of their populations. So, in other words, national civil protection prepares the frameworks for the program, and the parishes and also the municipalities mobilize the citizens. And so far, what has been done? Okay, identification of critical clusters, creation of buffer zones to protect, of course, the clusters, implementation, as I told you in the beginning, the expedited warning mechanisms to alert population. That was a lack identified in 2017, and the identification and signaling the shelters or places of refuge in the clusters. The implementation of both programs started in 2018. Currently, they are implemented in 2,064 villages. Just to make the difference and to explain what is a refugee and what is a shelter. Well, a shelter is a secure and enclosed space, such as a building, for example, where people can safely wait for the fire to pass. And a place of refugee is an open space like this one in the photo, is an open and a safe place, for example, a village square. Okay, this is the difference between a refugee or a shelter. Well, of course, we are committed in the creation of evacuation plans, identifying and also signaling the evacuation routes, carrying out drills. It's very important, this point, and also carry out local awareness campaigns. This is what is being done so far or at this moment. Okay, about the implementation support material. We have some signal kits, as I told you before, the shelter, the refugees, and the directions. And also the program as an evacuation kit that is composed by that is composed by a first aid kit with a radio, a lantern, or a whistle, an anti-smoke mask, or a water bottle. Okay, but I must refer this, as you all know, the program was affected in 2019 by the smoke mask issue, which, in my opinion, may have seriously hurt both programs. The question was linked to the composition of the masks, since they were not made of fire retardant material. Anyway, the program continues, the life goes on, and there are some more implementation of support material, such as leaflets in Portuguese. They are also available in other 5 languages, and they are also announced in TV spots, radio announcements, social media, and the program has also a website where you can consult or take all the other information that you might need. So this is the address of the website for the program Safe People, Village People. These are some numbers that the program took at this moment. Well, in our opinion, this is a good program, but lately it hasn't had the support. Sorry again, but lately it hasn't had the support or the expected adhesion from rural communities. We know that it's been 5 years since 2017. Probably the villagers or the communities, well, think it's a thing from the past. This is not the right way of thinking, in our opinion, but that can explain everything, okay? In my opinion, also, this may indicate that the program is in need of a review, for example. Anyway, this is the only official program that prepares people in the territory for the problem of the rural fires, and at the same time alerts and involve the parishes and also the municipalities to this problem. So I finished my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm available for any question that you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pedro. You presented two very good examples of the many things that the civil protection is doing in this role, in this activity, and there is great interest for what you presented. This is translated by many questions. You will have access to these questions, and if you agree, I will ask you later to respond to some of them if we don't have time now. I will just pick up a couple of them. One comes from George Eftikidis. He's asking if there is any plan to use drones for the patrolling operations, and also on the he asks about the simulator. What is it doing? If, for example, if we have a map of Portugal, a full map to be used by this program. We have another question from Frédéric Giroux from France. She's asking if there is which organization is doing this propagation model, if it is in the field or in the command post. I think you replied already, but you may clarify this. And there are several questions that come from firefighters asking if there is any training program to train people, to prepare people to use and have access to this information and to all this data. And I think this is already quite a lot for you to cope, please.
Thank you very much. I will ask, if you don't mind, Professor, a question that was addressed to Orlindo about the evacuation, who decides the evacuation. And I think he didn't, the person who put the question didn't get the answer, I suppose. Well, the guy who is in charge to decide about the evacuation or the confinement of the villagers is the on-site commander, okay? He decides on the command post if he wants to take the evacuation of a village or not, or if you want to put the place in a shelter, for example, as I told you. Most of the times the evacuation is not the only solution, and in my opinion, sometimes it's not the best solution. If you have available a place for a shelter or a refugee, it could be the solution. Don't think only about evacuation, okay? Okay, it's a solution, but don't think about evacuation is the only solution. Okay, about drones, I suppose this was one of the questions. We use drones at this moment, but only to support the ongoing fires and the ongoing information. I think that the question was addressed to the use of drones in prevention. Am I correct, Professor?
Yes, and also during the operations.
Okay, on operations, we use drones only by night because, as you all know, the legislation, aeronautic legislation, does not allow to have at the same time drones and aerial means over the fire. Okay, so you have to decide: during the day. You use aerial means such as helicopters or aircrafts, or you use drones. You cannot use both at the same time. The Portuguese legislation, and I think the international, does not allow this situation. So during the day, we use helicopters and aircrafts, and during the night, we use drones. Why by the night? Obviously, aerial means do not fly during the night period, okay? We use them to collect all the information about the ground means, the perimeter of the fire, infrared image, and so on. And I think you addressed me, Professor, a third question, but unfortunately, sorry, I don't remember.
Well, it was about the training, where this simulation is done, and where do you have plans to train the firefighters to use that?
Okay. The simulations are made in the decision support cell that I show you. They work quite near from the place where I am, 10 meters, no more than that. They have a small room where the decision support cell works in cooperation with fire behavior analysts and also with pyrometeorologists. Okay, so they produce the simulations, and all the outputs, they are inserted in the system, and the on-site commander, of course, I told you, he got the access on the platform, and he receives all the information almost in real time. Okay, just download on the post command there is mounted on the field. It just access the platform, download the data, and he has all the information. It's quite simple. I will permit, Professor, I use this acronym, KISS, keep it simply stupid. Okay, I think it's a good way to reach the goal.
Okay, Pedro, Nunes, thank you very much. I think we are already exceeding the time. And in the end, if there are more questions, and if you can also read the questions that are there in the debate period, I ask you please to try to address them as well. Well, let's move on. I would like now to introduce João Pinho from the Institute of Forestry. He is a forestry engineer graduated by the University of Lisbon. He developed all his professional career at the National Conservation Institute for Forests, and always holding positions of responsibility related to wildfire management. He is currently the head of the Department of Rural Fire Management at the Institute of Nature Conservation Forests. João Pinho, please, we are willing to listen to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Professor. I'm very glad to be here, and ICNF is very glad to participate in this project as a partner of Coimbra University and being in this web seminar. So thank you for your invitation, and thank you for the work of your team. I will start my presentation.
You are sharing, but
yes.
The presentation. It's okay.
Firstly, I'd like to apologize in advance for my English, which is not very good. I hope my message will be clear. But again, we after the seminar can address some of the questions and some of the doubts that may arise during the presentation. ICNF is the national authority for nature conservation and for forests. Although we have a lot of legal attributions regarding land management and natural resources management, and also, for example, animal welfare. So it's a lot of objectives and goals that our institute has, and managing rural fires, it's one of the most important tasks that we have alongside with all the other ones. We are the managers of national level protected areas, and also of national forests and other communal lands that are within forest regime. And we have dozens of programs regarding the protection of natural resources, and also hunting resources, inland water resources, etc. So we work in every inch of our country, and also in working alongside with other partners regarding all these attributions. In rural fires, we have the responsibility to coordinate the rural fire management branch, as Arlindo already said. It deals with structural prevention. It deals with forest regime implementation of fire management guidelines, and also managing, for example, the forest sappers program. Our law also tells us to manage grazing and to implement grazing and to expand grazing, so that it can be a landscape management tool also. We are a very old organization. The first Forest Service and Nature Conservation Service in Cester was created nearly 200 years ago, just 3 days after a disastrous fire that destroyed most, it was a mega fire already, that destroyed most of our most important national forests. And after that, the Forest Service tried to implement sustainable management, scientific-based sustainable management, and also at the same time a fire protection program, because fire, as I will address later, it's a natural feature of our landscape, and so forest management must have included also and always fire management. And it took about 100 years to restore that forest, and our past colleagues did an excellent job. At the time, it was regarded the fire service one of the best in the world. But what I would like to stress here, it's the time factor. Time is very important for forest management, for nature conservation management, and also for fire management. We are dealing with about 6 million hectares of forest lands that need to be treated, that need to be strategically worked, and that cannot be done in just some years. As I told, the restoration of Leiria National Forest after the 1824 fire, it took almost 100 years, and those are the kind of time frames that we work on. Of course, we need to protect people, and we need to manage the land for today, and those statistical programs must be implemented as fast as we can, but the structural changes take a long time. But as I told in the beginning, we live in a fire model ecosystem. Most of the plants and our forest systems, they are adapted to fire, and we must use those adaptations to implement wise measures so that fire is not a problem. It's not a destructive factor, but it's an useful tool so that we can get to our objectives. And it's for my linear, fire is just present every day and in every inch of our country. Another example, also 200 years ago, in the parliament, the congressmen already discussed the problem of fires. And this will be also a feature in the future. And that is because we are geographically in a very high prone area. We have a humid Mediterranean type climate. Fuels build up very quickly, and we always have 1 or 2 dry months in summer. Just as other regions in the world, and I give here an example of the western coast of North America, but this could be done also for other regions in the world, like South America or Western Australia. We have the right conditions to have fire disasters and tragedies as we had in the past. And if we put the western provinces and states of North America just above the western facade of Europe, we just can see that the places where the fire problem is worst are exactly in the same latitude and in the same geographical position as are in North America, for example. So Portuguese conditions are quite the same as Northern Californian conditions also. And some of the forest ecosystems are quite similar. The fire adaptations of plants and the habitats are more or less the same. Portugal still is in a forest transition phase. Our forest lands have been increasing steadily since the mid-19th century. This was due to public and private efforts, but the condition of forests, they are quite different today than they were 60 or 70 years ago. For example, for a period that was studied between the 40s and 2010, more or less, with Forest Service data that is being collected since the 40s. The biomass management, the fuels management, in those times, when, for example, most of the afforestation programs were launched, they were quite different than they are today. In those times, biomass collection was much more intense than it is today. Society needed more forest biomass. It was dependent on forest biomass, and they collected it. And that was very useful in lowering the fire danger, the fire risk. Those are not the conditions today, and we must know that so that we can make the right programs regarding afforestation and fire management. It was already showed by Erlind in the first presentation, but this is a more extended time frame. The burned area has increased steadily until 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Now it's decreasing, but we are quite susceptible to years where the fire risk is very high, and we are very dependent on meteorological conditions to that can give us very bad fire seasons. The fire regime, it's different in several regions in our country. It's in several areas we have a lot of fires, but the burned area it's quite small because fires are rapidly controlled, and there is a mixed landscape with agriculture, forests, and urban areas. But in other regions, the fires can spread in very large areas, and there are very few fires with very large areas, and those are the most problematic regions in the country. So burned areas and the fire interval, it's quite different regarding the different areas of our country. After 2017 and the shock that was to all our society, the tragic events in that year, there were followed three main strategic lines regarding to tackle the problem. They can be arranged in three different priorities. The first one is to decrease the number of ignitions. The second one, it was preparing the land for fires and preparing the land so that we can live with fires. And the third one is to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of firefighting and fire prevention linked with firefighting. These were more or less the same that were identified and that were implemented after the 2003 and 2005 fires. Those were very difficult fire seasons also. But after 2017, the pace of the implementation of those strategic lines were quite improved. And as Arlindo already told, there is a new phase and a new effort, a supplementary effort to bring all these strategic lines in concrete work in the field. So, for example, regarding the first component of these strategic lines, we must address the main fire causes, and I will explain here some of the programs that were implemented after 2017 and that are now giving some results as we intended. For example, after that year, the law was changed, and if one person wants to make fire, for example, to burn agricultural residues or agricultural biomass or forestry biomass, he must. It's mandatory to communicate that to the local authorities, and in some cases, it's mandatory to have permits. For example, in the days where fire weather, the weather is worse or it's more dangerous for fires. So in those days, for example, it's mandatory to have a permit. And the new law was efficiently implemented. It was enforced by the National Guard, and it was quite effectively. And we made a platform that linked people with the local authorities, with municipalities, which are the responsible entities to receive those communications and to manage locally those intentions of people to make fire. And it has been a very successful program. We now know where, for example, in the next 10 days, where people is going to make fires, use fire for their agricultural processes. This information is naturally shared with local authorities, but also with local fire brigades, local fire departments, and so we can manage more the use of fire with more caution, mainly in those days where weather conditions will be bad. So this is a very useful program that is giving us some hope that days like the 15th of October won't repeat again. Another interesting program that wants to tackle the problem of traditional fire use in mountains, mainly for pastoral burnings. It's the MARC program that was started with the coordination of AGIV 3 years ago, and that we are now implementing and expanding to all those regions in the northern mountains where fire is, how can I say it, omnipresent along all the year, and where we want to work with local people to make a wise use of fire, to also to learn with them, and so that fire doesn't become a problem to the natural resources that we want to protect, and also that all the goals and objectives of our local citizens are also met. And on the left side, you can see where the places in Portugal where traditional fire is more frequent, and where this program was specially designed for. Another important programs that was implemented alongside with the Civil Protection Authority is the rekindle control, mainly in large fires or fires that affected remote areas, and where we have the potential to have even greater fires if the fire perimeters are not well controlled. And after 2017, the Civil Protection Annual Plan includes forest sapper teams that have that special goal, and they have been very effective. It has been one of the main reasons why rekindle have been diminishing in the last years. And so we want to expand also these kinds of programs, also with the new human resources that we have in the Forest Sappers program, and also in the forest firefighting area that we are now building in ICNF. Regarding the most difficult problem of all, that it's building fire smart landscapes and dealing with the territory so that it can be more resistant and more resilient to fires. In this matter, we still follow the FAO guidelines that were created mainly for the countries in the Mediterranean basin about 20 years ago. These guidelines were transferred to Portuguese legislation after the 2003 and 2005 fire seasons. So it's in our legislation since 2006. What changed after 2017? It's the pace of implementation of these programs that were planned after 2006, but due to several limitations, they were not fully implemented. And that's what we want to do now in this 10-year program, in this 10-year plan that Arlindo told us in the first presentation. One example that I can give you, it's the shaded full break network that was planned after 2004, and that it's now being implemented with a very high effort from not only from ICNF but also from local authorities, the municipalities, and also from the forest owners organization and forest managers. This is a very interesting program, and also in the future we want to make things more efficient and to understand better how can we design most of these full breaks so that they can be more efficient and more efficiently used by firefighting forces in those moments that we needed to have in firefighting large fires. Another component of these fire smart landscapes are the strategic fuel management areas and the silvicultural treatments that forest managers must implement, so that if there is a fire, in the case of fire, we have a higher probability of forest survival, and forest stands can be permanent in the landscape, and also to retard the propagation of fire. We are now starting the law last year also changed the legal framework of these strategic fuel management areas. We also have already started with the planning and the implementation of these areas in some landscape change plans that were made after fires, for example, in Western Algarve, in, for example, the Monchique Mountain, that has a special forest program in that area. And these strategic fuel management areas have been designed to address the problem of creating a more resistant landscape. And if well implemented, they can be quite effective in protecting forests and protecting the value of forests, because in Portugal, the state owns only about 3% of the forest area, so 97% is managed or it's owned by private forest owners, and with very small holdings, so that keeping and improving, or at least preserving, the value of the forests and forest products, it's essential, it's fundamental, so that we can have a sustainable forest management in the future. Another program that I'd like to highlight here, and Pedro Nunes, Commander Pedro Nunes, already told us some components of this program, is the new village condominium program that was created in 2018 after the fires, and that it wants to improve the management of the buffer areas around villages in certain regions of the country, the regions that where fire danger is higher due to the buildup of biomass and forest fuels. And this program, which now has about 60 projects that are in place and that are being implemented, will be instrumental in the next years, so that we can deliver a more safe landscape to all those villages and small towns that we have inside very large forested areas with a strong continuity of forest fuels. Of course, there are other goals and other outcomes that this village condominium program will deliver, but the main one is to give a safer landscape to people that want to live in our rural areas that are still there and that can develop local activities and the local economy, and we must protect those people that are implementing all those activities there. Another program which was started after the fires, it's the silvopastoralism support program that treats around 3,000 hectares each year, and that we also want to improve and expand to other areas, so that maintaining all those buffer areas will be cheaper and will be financially sustainable in the future. Another point that I'd like to address here, I think that one of the questions was by one of the participants already asked about this. It's post-fire restoration. If you want to have a future in most of our areas, we must right after the fire protect the soil. We must start managing well the salvage areas, and that is a key feature that we can have a proper forest management in the coming years. If we don't treat our territory after the fires, it will be very difficult to implement sustainable forest and habitat management after in the coming decades. And we are now, after the fires, changing the resources and the perspectives that we are using in these components. Last year we have the first internal directive on post-fire activities, so that all the resources of ICNF could be addressed to solve this problem. And this year, after the new law last October, we will have a national directive where all the agencies, namely the water agency, the fireman, the civil protection agency, and all the forest owner associations can work together to implement those activities that are mandatory to do after the fires. Just another example from a fire already this year. This is a type of activities that we are now starting to implement. It was done not only by the Forest Service, but also by local municipalities, and also from local forest associations. And this storm patrol after rainy events or storms, where most of the soil is lost and where most of the infrastructure are really damaged and heavily damaged. If we do this kind of very simple works timely, those destructions will be are not mandatory to have those destructions, and so we can preserve all the investments that we made in the past, and to solve the erosion and the destruction problems also. I'd like to finish my presentation highlighting also that ICNF had its resources reinforced after the 2017 fire season. It was already said here that a very group of high proficiency fire expert technicians that was trained by AGIF were transferred to ICNF and joined with the very proficient also technicians that we had in the previously in the Forest and Nature Conservation Service. So it was created a new national direction for rural fire management, and also at the same time it was created the Forest Firefighters Force that is equipped with all the technical resources, so that in the future the Forest Service can have a direct intervention capability in not only fire prevention and, for example, maintaining all those fuel break and buffers around villages directly, but also participate in the firefighting efforts under the command of the Civil Protection Agency, and also implementing timely the post-fire treatments that are needed to be done right after the fires. So we are now implementing this forest firefighters force just in the start. We have about 40 forest sappers that are now working and being trained.
Excuse me, can we
Yes.
conclude, please?
And it was just to conclude.
Okay.
I'd like to thank you all the attention, and I will be very keen to explain and some details that you must need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, João. All the presentations are raising great interest, and there are many questions. Of course, we cannot take all of them now. What I can suggest is that those that are not responded during the webinar, we'll ask the speakers to respond them in writing, and then we'll share this with the participants. We intend to make a break before we continue, but anyhow, let me ask João a couple of questions that came from the audience. One is about the causes of the fire, if arson is a very relevant cause. And a participant who comes from Australia, or at least has Australian background, is asking about the role of eucalyptus, because the experience in Australia, and of course in Portugal, is that it creates very bad fires. And what is the rule or the policy of the country about this part?
Regarding arson as a fire cause, I don't think that is more or less important than in other countries. But as we control other fire causes, like, for example, fire use or accidents by machinery in those worst days, of course, arson will become more important because it's more difficult to control. But I didn't told all the programs that were implemented after 2017. We have created with the judiciary, police, and the National Republican Guard special teams that are working in the northern and central part of the country. And those teams have been very efficient in addressing the problem, not only of certain regions and certain periods where a very large number of fires arise, but also tackling the problem of arson. And for example, very large fires which had this type of cause have been prevented by the excellent work that the judiciary, police, and the National Guard have been implemented in the field, and it's been in the news in Portugal, and I think that we can have some progress also in that component. Regarding the role of eucalyptus are fire-adapted species, as are most of the Portuguese forest and ecosystems. The general rule is that more important than the species. It's the full continuity management within forest stands. So eucalyptus and pine plantations, for example, can be managed to be much more resistant to fire, and they can be a solution because those type of forests, if well managed and actively managed, they will give us more chances to have a treated landscape and a more resistant landscape. So our effort is to have good management rules on the forest management side, so that those type of forests that can be more risky, it's on the other side more safe forest stands. But regarding all these are very complex subjects, and even a forest type that usually doesn't burn, for example, cork oak stands with agricultural or silvopastoralism under the canopy. In other mountain areas, they can be as susceptible as eucalyptus or pine plantations. So we must actively manage our forests, and only by that we can diminish the fire risk.
Okay, thank you, João. And I thank also the previous speakers. We now go for a short break of 5 minutes, so we'll be back in a few minutes after 11, okay, to continue. Thank you very much. E agora? Diga. Welcome to the continuation of our webinar. I will now introduce Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Alves from the National Republican Guard, and I would like to first of all to thank him for and the National Guard for having accepted our invitation, and say a few words about Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Alves. He has a degree in military sciences and a master's degree in law and security. He is presently the head of the Nature and Environment Division of the Directorate of Nature and Environment Protection of National Republican Guard. He is the commander of the National Guard School and also the liaison officer with the Civil Protection Agency. Colonel Ricardo Alves, you are most welcome.
Thank you very much, Professor. Now I will try to share my screen. I think you are already seeing my screen.
Not yet. Not yet. Yes, it's starting now. It's okay. But you can put it in full. It's good now. Okay.
Yeah. So, first of all, good morning to everyone. I'm very pleased to be part of this panel. I'm also very grateful to Professor Xavier Viegas and his team for this excellent initiative. Of course, we still have in our minds the tragic memories of the year 2017, and the lessons we learned from those episodes allow GNR to put in place several strategies and changes regarding our responsibilities. The single most important thing I want to share with you today is the new vision of Portugal without major forest fires and the path that GNR tries to get there. I think this talk should be of particular interest to those of you who want to share the same vision. This is the agenda that I propose to talk briefly in the next minutes. But right now, let's begin by looking at the previous system. The previous system was divided into three pillars. All of you know these three pillars. The first one, structural prevention, the second one, operational prevention, and the third one, firefighting. Right now, we changed this paradigm and we already know the 6 stages that AGIF spoke about, starting by planning and finishing by the post-event. In the first one, GNR was the connection link between both. But now GNR stands working in several of these 6 stages. Of course, after 2017, Portugal continues to struggle with several structural and conjunctural problems, with emphasis on large agricultural and forested areas being unattended and not maintained. I think this is the most huge challenge that we are facing right now. And of course, the period of fires is increased. Right now, we don't have just extreme conditions from July to September, but we enlarge the period to several weeks before and several weeks after. But like it was mentioned, one of the most important issues that we changed since 2017 was the paradigm about the costs in prevention and the costs in suppression. This approach, by doing this approach, I think we will be more effective regarding the problem of forest fires in Portugal. By saying this, I think in due time GNR was able to understand what society wanted and how could GNR be added value through the participation in different lines of action all year round. As you can see here, the first phase, we started by prevention and planning. We use several layers, several programs in order to plan our action for all the year. And then in the middle of February, we started the phase 2 that we call execution. We performed here several awareness actions, prescribed burning, monitor land management, surveillance actions, suppression, investigation of the forest fire causes, and of course, this occurs in the third phase that we call the consolidation phase. These are simple photos of our tasks regarding this new paradigm about the integrated management of forest fires. As you can see here, GNR at national level actively participates in all stages. The first one, prevention, awareness actions, are really important for us to share our vision to the population. We are very close to the population. We have boots on the ground, like we say, in order to allow us to have a concrete and effective approach to the population. Then you have prevention actions. I will spoke a more concrete approach in the next slides. We have as well the pre-suppression surveillance, the suppression with the unit of protection and relief, and of course the post-event actions. With the paradigm shift, the GNR started to invest on new strategies to reduce the number of ignition. The first one is the monitoring awareness plan. We realized that we should get more in touch with the people most vulnerable to this problem. This was a very ambitious plan, but now we can testify the huge success of it. Let me briefly summarize this plan. We start to get in touch with the population and monitor the most risky episodes close to houses, close to roads, to railroads, and we put these photos, like you can see here on the left, on a tablet or on a mobile phone that linked automatically to a platform. And now in the second image, you can see all Portugal monitored the cases that were flagged by us. The green ones represented the situations that were conducted by population to reduce the fuel, to have fuel management, and the points in red represent the ones that are not capable to pass on this monitoring plan. Like we can see here, each point represents one situation. For instance, this one here, in the photo, you can see the trees, the eucalyptus, near a house. And this represents, this poses a very threat risk to the owners of this house. Like you can see here, this is the image that we have on our platform. This is an image from the last day. By now, in the year 2022, we started this plan in the 21st of February. And right now we have more than 5,000 situations monitored. We have flagged all these situations. Of course, right now these situations should be accomplished in by the population, by the owners of the lands. But we think these situations, like we can hear here in the image, could be managed by the owners. Like I said before, this was a very ambitious plan, but now the numbers show us that this was a real success. Like you can see here, we started this plan in the year of 2019. We monitored more than 31,000 flagged situations. We reduced in 2020 to up to 24,000, and in the last year we flagged more than 14,000 situations. Of course, the non-compliance situations are reducing year by year, like you can see in the chart. Another new feature introduced by GNR was the integrated surveillance and the forest fire detection system. We proposed to our minister one integrated directive in the year of 2021. And the main objectives of these instruments are to guarantee interinstitutional coordination between the entities that work on this field, all the institutions. The second one is to ensure articulation and optimization of national network of surveillance posts, fixed surveillance, and of course, video surveillance. And the last one, the permanent consultation of guidance for all the entities that work on this field. This was also a tremendous success because several countries asked us for this document. Even Brazil asked us for more clarifications regarding the use of this instrument at the national level. As you can see here, this might appear a confusion by this image, but as you can see here, all this means aerial means, terrestrial means, surveillance, the towers of surveillance. This should be an integrated approach, and this was what we intended to do since 2021. In other words, since 2021, we have a coordination surveillance network under GNR coordination to maximize each entity resources. Of course, this should be put on a platform. We developed another platform. We manage this single platform where we can put down all the information regarding surveillance and detection. We created a special cell, like we call the surveillance support cell, with several experts from different agencies, different entities, and this could give us more tools to have a concrete approach to the detection and surveillance of our forest fires. We use several layers, several maps, and we put it all together. We combine it, several data, and mix it into several report plan. For instance, you can see here from my left to your right, we have the surveillance of video surveillance cameras. We have the national network of surveillance posts, the basins of surveillance. We have on the third map the hazard map of Portugal. And of course, we have the flying sectors of the drones that we use in order to have a more concrete surveillance on this topic. We use as well the fire-prone areas. We use maps and this special cell analyze this data, also with the historical ignitions and the time when they occur. Basically, we use intelligence-led policing to prioritize our actions. For instance, here you can see on the chart the hours of the historical ignitions that we have and the places where they occur. As I mentioned out earlier, another priority continues to be the high level of training of the LE-Tech teams to ensure a first response success. Right now, we have a first response success rate about 95%. Just for having a concrete vision, in 2021, more than 3,000 first response missions were performed by our special unit, protection and relief unit, with their teams. Just for you to have a clear vision, a clear notion of what we do. For instance, we have here a surveillance tower. The surveillance tower detects a fire, one ignition, and then by the CREDOS, which is the authority of civil protection that manages the dispatch means of a helicopter or a heli-tech team. This heli moves into the ignition in the 10 minutes period, and it could be combined with a terrestrial team. And of course, the teams perform the job regarding the extinguish of the fire, like you can see here in the images. And if in 90 minutes the fire is not extinguished, then we start, the civil protection service starts with another strategy. But I think we have to bear in mind that this is another issue that we are firmly committed in order to prevent ignitions. And of course, we should have more concrete actions regarding the forest fire investigations. As you are all aware, we need to know the causes of the forest fires in order to determine the criminals behind these ignitions. And this is a huge process, a huge job that we do year by year. That's why we put our efforts to incorporate new men as forest guards. For instance, last year we performed a training course, not just to incorporate forest guards, but to have a more effective approach to the investigation of the causes. We have several courses regarding the investigation of the causes, like you can see here on the images. These images are taken from Viseu, which is a city in the middle of Portugal, where this course was performed. But we have to bear in mind that this is a very tough process. Like you can see here, these are all the phases about the investigation process. This takes too much time, and several parts of the process are often taking place at the same time or are repeated at different phases of the investigation. So we will start by the news of the fire, and then we try to reach the final stage, which is to identify the potential ignition source of the cause. Like you can see here in the chart, we have increasing our rate of investigations. We started at a very, very low rate. For instance, until 2006, this job was performed by a previous agency that was in Portugal, which was DGRF. But since 2006, that was the year of creation of the Nature and Environment Protection Service, we can reach and increase the rate of the investigation. Right now, we have more or less 93% of our forest fires are investigated by our men. But of course, we want, our aim is to reduce the unknown causes that represent historically more or less 30% of the investigated causes. We have to bear in mind as well that this is a very difficult crime to investigate, because all the proofs are destroyed by fire, or almost lots of proofs are destroyed by the fire, but this is our job, and we try to perform a concrete and effective investigation. But of course, there are constraints, like in other process, we face several constraints. The first one, we think that the inexistence of a global system of collection and destruction or recovery of forest and agricultural waste to avoid ignition, this should be a highlight point that Portugal should think about. Of course, we have as well the land structure in mainland Portugal very fragmented, and we knew very few owners. So the properties should have an owner to identify and to put the charge on the owners of the land. Of course, low population density in rural areas doesn't help us in our job, but this is a real constraint that we are facing. And of course, the last one is the agricultural waste fires. We think that this is no longer the option. For instance, an academic study was published and it concluded that just for olive oil, olive trees and vineyard waste fires, more than 514,000 of CO2 were released to atmosphere. Of course, this is too much nowadays, and we have to bear in mind that the EU Green Deal Pact it poses to us some challenges regarding the release of substances to the atmosphere. So we think this is no longer one option, the waste fires that we produce in Portugal. This leads me directly to my next points, which are the conclusions. The first one, I think the integrated approach forced us to manage surveillance, detection, deterrence, suppression, and emergency management in a coordinated and effective way. And this is the strategy that we took to tackle this huge problem about forest fires. The second one is that we have to improve our awareness raising actions, because we have to bear in mind that GNR is the only institution of the central administration of the state that has an effective presence in all municipalities, allowing to have trust with citizens, and we have to bear in mind that this is an important tool that GNR provides to the society. The third one is the implementation of a successful monitoring plan, and this could provide Portugal to a better approach to the fuel management problem. Other conclusion is to keep the operational maintenance for the first response combat teams of the emergency protection and relief unit. We should keep the men with great physical and psychological capacity associated with a disciplined hierarchical structure. The other conclusion is to ensure more training and increase the number of investigators of forest fire causes. And all this will lead us to our goal, which is reducing the number of ignitions. And like you can see here, since 2017, we have consolidated this aim, this goal, to reduce the number of ignitions. We should step by step looking to the future, and these are the main, I would say, 5 topics that we should perform: flexibility and adaptability, knowing our role near the citizens, and we have to do this connection link with society. The use of progressive implementation of new technologies, such as platforms, mobile phones, tablets, in order to monitorize the properties. The investment on training, especially in suppression actions. The interaction with other SGIF entities, such as AGIF, ICNF, ANEPC, and so on. And of course, we should put all the value placed on human capital. We strongly believe that human resources are the future of the institution. I'd like to finish with something that Leon Megginson once said, which is, it's not the strongest that survives, nor the smartest, but the one that best adapts to the change. So this, I think, were the main messages that I wanted to pass to you. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much also, Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Alves, for your very good, excellent presentation. We are, of course, a bit short of time, but anyway, I'd like to pick a couple of questions that are here from the audience. One is about the situation of the success of the initial attack. You mentioned that nowadays it's almost 95% of the initial fires are stopped, but that's due to the effort of not only GNR, but also other forces that participate in this initial attack, I suppose. Just to make this clear, the question was asked. And another question about the investigation of the causes is there are still many that are under non-determined, so unknown causes. Is there any effort to reduce this percentage of unknown causes? Please, Colonel.
Thank you for these questions. I just want to clarify that the success rate of 95%, this number just represents the actions by our ELITech teams, which means that we have teams that try to fight the fire with the helicopters, and right now this rate just represents the action by these ELITech teams, 95%. The second question, like I mentioned before, of course we try to reduce the unknown causes, but like I mentioned, this is a different type of crime. For instance, we also investigate murders, we investigate another crimes, but in this crime, most of the frequencies the proofs are destroyed by fire. So when we go to the field to investigate the ignition, we have to bear in mind that the proofs were taken by the fire, and this is a very tough decision to do, but we still have these training courses, and we try to reduce the unknown causes.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel. Well, being a Portuguese citizen who follows these the processes with great attention, I must say that the GNR took this hold for the recent years, and they have excelled their performance. As you could see, GNR is working in all phases of the process of the fire risk management, and they are doing this with great professionalism, as we could see. Of course, not everything could be presented here, but I thank again Lieutenant Colonel for his excellent presentation, because he gave a very good overview of this. Again, there may be other questions, but I will now move to the last speaker of our webinar, who comes from the Institute of Meteorology, Dr. Nuno Moreira. He has a master's degree in geophysical sciences, a specialty of meteorology, from the University of Lisbon. He works at the Portuguese Institute of Sea and Atmosphere, IPMA, since 1998, and he is now he was the head of the numerical weather prediction, weather watch, and remote sensing division, and he is now the liaison with the National Agency for the Emergency and Civil Protection, and also with the AGIF. I think it's very important to remark here that from 5 institutions that are present, 3 of them are partners of the Fire Risk Project, and IPMA is one of them. And for us, it's very good to have this partnership, of course, also with the GNR. We have protocols, and with AGIF, we also have protocols, and it's very important to be in close connection with research and with the operations. And the Institute of Meteorology is a mix. It is both a research institute, but also provides services. Nuno Moreira, you are most welcome to give your lecture, please.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Xavier Viegas. I would like to thank you, Adai, to invite IPMA in the scope of the fire risk. As you mentioned, IPMA is also a part of it. And I will now share my presentation. I hope you can see it. Please tell me if you can see it. Perfect, it's okay. Okay, so I will talk about the IPMA role in the Portuguese integrated management system of forest fires. Of course, I have to mention that the technical contributions that I will be showing are coming from the many divisions and units on IPMA, mostly from the Meteorology and Geophysics Department, with the Weather Forecast and Watch Division, the Climate and Climate Change Division, and the Earth Observation Unit, and also staff from IT, of course, and Communication Division, as IT is key for having all these meteorological data working on. So the summary of my presentation, I will split the presentation in 3 parts. First, I will talk about the fire weather danger risk inside the integrated system. And then the second and third will be basically the 2 main areas of action that we have. So the first is regarding meteorological data and know-how to support decision making, and I will give some examples. And the third part will be related to the IT solutions that we have for sharing meteorological data. So I will start with the first, just to check. And you heard about these 4 big strategic guidelines that were presented in the beginning by AGIF. So basically, we are more related to the last one. We support the others, of course, but we are more involved in the risk management, which is the red here. And this 4th guideline is the one that's related to managing the risk efficiently. So as I mentioned, there are 2 meteorological data. on one side and IT solutions on the other side. So I will go first on this meteorological data and know-how in the next slides. So I will start with the infrastructures that support the meteorological data. I will start with the radar. We have 3 radars in mainland. One of them has dual polarization, which is this one in the image in the north. And by 2023, the plan is to have dual polarization in the whole network. So for the other 2 in the center and south of the country. This is one of the areas of development in the meteorological data activity, which is explicitly, let's say, written in the documents, and we do monitor and then check the evolution of this area. And you'll see more to the middle of the presentation how important radar can be. Of course, radar is important to other areas of meteorology, but you'll see later what's the importance regarding forest fires. A second part on the infrastructures and observations relates to weather stations. In 2021, this was the network where we computed the fire weather index for this location. So it's 120 weather stations. Not all of them are from IPMA. So we had 28 stations that come from 7 external entities. They are here explained. And this, in fact, was a 29% increase comparing to 2020. So when we had only well, at least 193 stations. Of course, for this year, for 2022, we are now evaluating weather stations from 2 other external entities, and we will check how this can then be implemented for this year. But the percentage shall not be as big as from 2020 to 2021. Also, I would like to let you know about modeling in terms of infrastructures, although it's not explicitly in the documentations that we follow in these meteorological data. But I would like to let you know that the numerical weather prediction models that we are using, it's in the ECMWF as the global model and the AROM as the local area model. The systems that enable using this data are this HPC operational system and IBM, in which the AROM model is computed, and we have a post-processing system that processes everything that's also coming from the HPC and also from the ECMWF, and then provides all the information. So it's a very key aspect of the processing. But of course, human resources is one of the most important things about meteorology also. So we had make a big effort to increase the number of human resources at IPMA. So this was already happening last year, both on the meteorology side and the IT side. And there is also plans for next years to increase the number of meteorologists and the number of IT experts. Of course, we all know climate change is here to stay. So there is an increase of frequency of extreme weather. So this increase really is related to a need of increase of human resources to tackle all these new things. We just, for those of you who are living in Portugal and Spain, can just look over the window and you'll see the dust storm that's just affecting us, and a rather unusual one. Also, human resources is not only about getting more people, but also of capacitating the existing ones. And we are, of course, doing this for both IPMA staff and also from staff from external institutions with training activities before season peak, let's call it. We have dedicated topics. For instance, last year we had a training on the tephigram and some major products updates, which happened, for instance, in 2020. Of course, there is an interaction. You already see this in these complex graphics. This is another one that tries to show how the operational entities can interact. This is the let's say the 6 entities that I put here. Those are the ones that we interact more, and you've already seen the National Agency for Emergency Civil Protection, National Republican Guards, National Armed Forces, the National Institute for Nature Conservation Forests, and AGIF, the Agency for the Integrated Management of Forest Fires. And of course, this just to let you know that in this afternoon, for instance, there will be a meeting with these 6 entities for an annual update topic. But of course, you have the interaction with the national academia. So we had these IND forest fire related projects that were supported by the Portuguese Foundation for Science and Technology, both in 2017 and 2019. And IPMA is part of 3 of them: Firecast with the University of Lisbon and ESA, ADL regarding the forecasting fire probability and characteristics for an habitable fire environment. We had Firestorm with ADAI, with IDMEC, which is from the Lisbon University and Aveiro University, on weather and behavior of firestorms. And then Smokestorm, a recent one from 2019, regarding forest and communication of forest fire smoke effects. Also, as already mentioned, we are one of the members of the fire risk project. So you already know about this, and I will pass to another one. That's the Aristotle Enhanced European Natural Hazard Scientific Partnership, which supports the European civil protection regarding many hazards. IPMA is in this project since 2015, and the forest fire has been integrated also as an hazard, and the IPMA is one of the 4 European partners for the forest fire hazard since 2020. Now a new topic, still inside the meteorological data, it's content development, of course, the details. One of the initiatives that we have in this area, I stated here, direct translation from the Portuguese, is to document the methodology of meteorological products that are used in rural fires, ensuring quality, updates, and then create a standard for the dissemination of these products. So this is basically the tip of an iceberg, a big one, because we had to split this, of course, in 5 work packages. Exactly, there are 5. And I will talk about these now briefly, and then I'll show some examples later. So the first one regards forest fire danger, spatial and temporal discrimination. So it's trying to bring from research everything that we can have to put it into operations. And so we have some annual product updates, and we have to do some product evaluation, comparison, and development. So this is one of the topics. I will show later some examples. The second topic is regarding fuel moisture, which is of course a factor for forest fire risk. And here it's in situ and satellite data that are key. And one of the aims is to do some product calibration. The third one relates to synoptic and mesoscale weather patterns. We have the large-scale weather patterns, and we have local patterns. And I will show one example of each later on. Then we have the probabilistic forecast of forest fire danger, where we have to look at anomalies, extremes. Of course, again, on the scope of climate change, this is clearly very, very important. And finally, we have the seasonal forecast. So let's talk. We are talking about 1 to 3 months forecast, looking how it deviates from climatology. So these are the 5 main package in technical content that we organized. Let's say our development. So now checking at the examples of these 5 work package. So I'm just going to show one example or 2 from each, because we don't have time to show everything. But from this forest fire dangers, spatial and temporal discrimination, I'm showing something that was a test. It was in a test phase last year. It was the hourly evolution of fire-related weather indexes. So both the fire weather index and the two sub-indexes, the fine fuel moisture content and the initial spread index. They are here in the top, and this is in the bottom. They are the temperature, relative humidity, and wind. And in fact, it's planned to be available in operations for this year. Regarding the fuel moisture work package, there was a start in 2021 with this plotting in our website, where we put information that was coming from 14 locations from AGIF, and with 4 types of vegetation, and also with a comparison with the drought code from Fire Weather Index here. And there is a plan for this year to extend to other locations and to work on a satellite-based model for this. Regarding the third topic, the synodic and mesoscale weather patterns, here I show you a development on the large scale weather patterns. This is an article that was produced in the end of last year regarding climatology of extreme wildfires in Portugal in the period of 1980 and 2018, contributions to forecasting and preparedness. It was done on the scope of the Firestorm project in a cooperation between IPMA and ADAI. So in this article here, 53 extreme wildfire periods were identified. The weather types that were found were the northeast mainly, and then also the north and the east. One of the very interesting conclusions was for the northeast and east weather types, it was possible to compute a 2-meter temperature anomaly of +5 degrees and the relative humidity at 925 hectopascal, with the anomaly of -20 for these weather types. So as you see, the project already started in 2018, but clearly there was some time until we get to the end. So this is clearly a multi-year cycle between research and operation. It was already discussed before in the previous presentations also. So we have this cycle with the interface between research and operations playing a big role here. So this is clearly one of the where the two cycles, let's say the year cycle for updates and the multi-year cycle for research, they really have to work together, so we can have some percolation of the research into the operations at some stage. And this has been already for the annual report that IPMA has done. Some of the things in here have already percolated, let's say. And this cycle is also applies to the second thing that I will show now, which was for local wind patterns and regarding convection. And in fact, this article was published last week, so it's really recent, and it regards the influence of convective-driven flows in the course of the large fire in Portugal in 2017. That was Pedro Grande. So it was 2017 in June, and so it's less than 5 years afterwards, but it was a big work, a very important work that has been done. Also a cooperation between IPMA and ADAI. And here, this is the conceptual model for the convective system. And first, it was identified, but the topics that are described in this article are these downbursts that everyone here in Portugal reminds of, that were observed to the southeast of the fire, that influenced the fire course, but not significantly. So, in fact, it was found after this long work that the major influence was coming from this strong descending flow, which is this blue area here of the rear inflow jet of this convective system that happened closer to the fire areas, and that this one, yes, affected significantly the fire course. And this is the radar data that was combined with the in situ and surface information. And this combination really enabled to get to this conclusion. And so here it's where, as I mentioned, the radar data is really, really important. In content development, then there is this, I will now move to fourth work package that I mentioned. It was regarding the probabilistic forecast. It started in 2019 with the forecast up to 9 days. These are 2 ways of showing it. And the plan now for this year is that we try to extend this to 15 days, which is not so straightforward as you might think, but because of course we know that we have a reduction on the capability of forecast in these days, so it's a challenge for us. And to the end of these topics on meteorological data, I want to tell you about the seasonal forecast. In 2021, we have increased the ensemble that, or using the data on an ensemble way from the Copernicus. So this information is processed internally. Well, it's available from Copernicus and we are processing it to display. So we have 1 month ahead. In this case is the 2-meter temperature anomaly for August last year. And this is the kind of weather charts that we make available. And in 2022, there is some planning on developing some products on forest fire parameters. So trying to check if there is an increase or decrease on the potential fire risk, of course, also in 1 to 3 months ahead, and using the European seasonal temperature and precipitation forecasts. Okay, so this was the end of this second topic on the meteorological data. And now I will move to the IT solutions for sharing the meteorological data. So for this, we have basically 2 systems. A first system is a meteorological data web platform that deals both with visualization and data services. So for visualizations, we have this system where you can look at the parameters, let's say the raw weather parameters like winds, temperature or precipitation. But you can also have the overlay of forest fire products like the fire weather index or even satellite hotspots. So this is the visualization part of this platform. On the other hand, you have the data service part, and that's the data that all the other institutions that already mentioned were mentioning before having this information in their own systems, so they can do it through this data service. So we have 4 domains. One is mainland Portugal, also Madeira and Azores, and North Atlantic. And you have 2 access modes, a real-time in an open access way, where you can access this data, and also an archive restricted access. So we still maintain the system working. A second way of showing the information is using another platform with the ready-to-use charts and graphics websites. This is the look of it. You have a big list of parameters that you can check, and then you have already charts that are already plotted in a tailored way. So we have deterministic forecast, like these raw weather parameters, like wind, with the forest fire scale. So it's tuned. It's not the same scale that you can use for other meteorological topics. You have, for instance, the post-processed parameter, like the dry thunderstorm probability that was developed at IPMA because of the convective importance on forest fires. And so this is a really tuned product. And of course, you have forest fire products. This case is the fire weather index forecast at station location. Then you have the probabilistic forecast. I already mentioned before. This is the example with the classes for fire weather index, initial spread index, defined fuel, moisture code, and all the others. So you can see how this evolution in terms. You can see the evolution on many on sequence days, and with the probability for each class to happen in more to the end of the period when you have more uncertainty. Also, we have some products that are merging forecast and monitoring. So you have these forest fire products. This is an example of the daily severity rating, a national mean. you can compare the current year, which is here in red, with all the years, and you can since 2003, and you can compare how the evolution is happening since the beginning of the year. Also, you have some more forest fire products, like in this case the daily fire weather index, which is here at a specific station. This is a station in the north of Portugal, and you can have the daily value, and you can compare with the percentile from historic data, and you can have the 7 days forecast, but also 1 month before, so you can really compare and check all the information in one map only, on one graphic in this case. And of course, just to finish, I mean, right in the end, we have the documentation of all this data. So both, so joining the topics, the meteorological data and the IT solutions. As I said, there were 2 web platforms. So we have the guides for these platforms. They are available. The first guide was for the data service guide, and is available since 2020. And last year we also made the guide for this last website platform in 2021. And so, of course, all the development has been done, and we try, of course, to document all the information so everything can be accessible and read. And that's all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nuno, for your excellent presentation. And this brings the presentations to the end. We have a large number of questions, as I mentioned before. That's good. That shows the interest of the audience, and we thank in particular the very positive comments that we received about the seminar. Well, although we are at the end of the time, I would ask you, if you don't mind, to stay a few minutes to reply some questions. Well, what I suggest is to pick from the many questions that were posed, 1 or 2 that could be of general interest for all the participants. And I would, for example, ask to all of you, what is the way that you are implementing these programs? Because we have seen that there are many programs, many projects, many plans, for example, of fuel management, of fire prevention, for example, what is the management of the forest, if it takes into account the fires, how do you handle the citizens, if the information, how it goes to the citizens. When there was, for example, one question about the existence of the register of the property, which we don't know. We know that it doesn't exist fully for Portugal, it was mentioned. What is being done for this? So this is an open or general question that I leave to all of you, and I would appreciate if you could give a reply as short as possible, not to take too much time, and I'll follow the order of the interventions, starting with you, Lindo Santos, please.
Yes, a brief comment. So, well, in fact, we have a lot of projects going on, and I would say the best way to deal with them is really to manage those projects. And Nuno Moreira just mentioned how he's approaching the projects that IPMA is responsible for. So they are doing it, and other entities are doing it in a structured manner. So organizing the project in work packages, defining responsibilities for each activity, and moving forward with the work. And this is being done by entities that have this kind of experience, and this is also starting to pass to entities that don't have those project management experience. So I think this is one of the plus points of this.
Okay, thank you. May I ask Pedro Nunes if you want to comment about this general question about how you manage these projects and this articulation, and can you also make some comment about the possibility of your system locate citizens during a fire, because this was a major drawback in 2017, and there was a question from the audience asking if this has been improved in these years.
Okay, I think I've answered this question. Was addressed to me. No, the system using the platform that I talk about, it's not possible at this moment to get information on real-time position of the citizens. It's quite impossible for us. We receive this information about the ground teams, but the position is related with the radio that they use, with the terminal of the communications. Okay? This is from where the information is coming. And this is what feeds the platform. About the citizens, at this moment, it's not possible. What do we use is to put a layer in the platform, and the layer has got information of the living people in that area, according to the census. Okay, I don't know if I was clear, Professor, but probably.
Okay, maybe the call now can also address this question of the people.
Okay, anyway, at this moment, a normal villager is not reported on the platform. Only the teams that are involved in a fire suppression operations. I'm talking about firefighters, I'm talking about National Guard, I'm talking about forest sappers, I'm talking about the guys from the National Institute for Medical Emergency, I'm talking about the teams from the armed forces. These teams and these operationals are geo-referencing in the platform, okay? At this moment, we don't have the capability to do this with the villagers or with the citizens.
Okay, thank you, Pedro. May I ask João if you want to address this general question about the coordination or articulation between the different agencies? How do you work? And if there has been improvement in this since 2017?
Thank you, Professor. Yes, there has been an improvement. ICNF is working with, and is responsible for about one third of the total number of projects within the national program that Arlindo explained us. So we have the coordination responsibility we need to work with a lot of different entities, namely those that are in this webinar, our colleagues, but also a large number of entities. For example, ICNF works daily and supports the work of about 280 forest management bureaus within local municipalities, which are quite important, so that all things that are planned are rightly implemented in the field, and we can monitor adequately all those works that are being made. Municipalities have a great deal of responsibility, and we work daily with them. Also, forest owners associations in a country where 97% of the forest land is not state-owned, so are quite important, so that all the objectives can be implemented in the field. And for example, one program that I didn't speak of, but it's not also led by ICNF, but we participate, it's the BUPI project, which aims to increase the national register in a simplified way, not as the geographical services intended in the middle 20th century, but working with forest owners and land owners, and again with local authorities, with municipalities, so that in a 10-year or 20-year period, people can have their land register updated. And this is a program that is made within the Ministry of Justice, with a task force that is now having very interesting results, and working along with all forest owners, and also other state agencies, including the Directorate General of Territory and ICNF. So it's a joint work. And as I told in my presentation, we are dealing with 6 million hectares. We are dealing with 11 million forest holdings. We are dealing with a huge resource that, to be well managed, must have the contribution of us all. And we are now approaching probably difficult times. I would like to stress that forests today, as in the past, were essential to, for example, energy consumption and other vital keys for nations. And all this work is done so that the forest resource can be sustainably used. And for example, energy is also a very important program that we didn't talk here, but in next webinars we can address also.
Thank you very much, João. May I ask Lieutenant Ricardo Alves if you want to comment about these questions that were posed, please? And any other topic that you think is worth mentioning, please.
Okay, thank you, Professor. I just want to add something. When we face and when we read our national program, made especially by AGIF with the collaboration of several entities, at the first sight, it's supposed to be a confusion. But since all the entities that are here, or all these 5 entities and lots of other entities work together, there are several work groups that put in place some of the visions that we share regarding this forest fire problem. And we have several men and women that talk each other and to join several times to face this problem. For instance, the products made by IPMA are very worth to us because they allow us to have a clear vision about the hazardous places of the territory. So we work together with IPMA, with the AGIF. There are several experts with TCNF and also with the Protection Civil Authority, and we work side by side. I don't think that this is a problem, but this will be a solution for the future. And the lessons that we learned from 2017 is that we should work together. And I think this we are using this rationale in order to have a more concrete approach to the problem.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel. I apologize for insisting with you, but there was a question from the participants about how do you manage the population, for example, the location of people during a fire. Of course, this is a very detailed question, but if you want to comment a bit on this. Ricardo Alves, please.
Sorry, like it was said before, I don't understand if the question is to put population in places, in protected places, or to move the people, because we have different responsibilities. National Republican Guard, as well with the police, they have to support protection civil decision about moving the population for shelters and for other places. So the main decision of moving the population is made by civil protection authorities. So to us, we just support and to help people to move from one side to another village or to a different shelter.
Thank you very much. Finally, to Nuno Moreira, the same question, although you addressed this point as well, but you may also pick some of the questions that are made now in the box, if you want to.
Yes, I will start with as Erlinda was mentioning, we really, well, we had to articulate so inside also. So I guess we have an integrated AGIF at IPMA to manage to make this integration inside. So then we can integrate outside. So I think that's the way to make it work. Of course, as it was mentioned by the GNR, we made these products available in data services, and this was one of the questions that I see here in the Q&A. And the NetCDF is the data format for this. And this information can be used by the different platforms, like Pedro Nunes was also explaining, in each system. So we both give information for others to ingest in their own systems, and we also provide already ready-to-use graphics and maps that can be inserted as it is happening, for instance, for the bulletin that is made every day during the season. So basically, and as I mentioned, we had this work package that we had to organize internally, and then we have many topics and many people, not only from IPMA but also from the other institutions, are in these topics. And of course, we had this academia cooperation, which is very important then to make it work. Maybe just moving to the questions, I see two questions here that are in the Q&A, and that I would like to answer very rapidly. One is for the weather stations in the Algarve, which we already identified as an issue in the interior part of the Algarve. Of course, we have this in mind. One of the things that I didn't put in the presentation, I was thinking of it, but then it was too long, was really to mention the regional plans, because IPMA is also involved in the regional plan, not only in the national plan, but in the regional plans in the 5 regions. And one of the things that I think it's very, very important there is to cooperate with regional entities to integrate the networks, the observation networks from these regions. So we are already doing it from a couple of them, but of course we can do more. I think all the institutional networks of observation should be integrated in the national one, so we can really have a big and wide coverage on fire weather index information. So this is one of the things that I think it's also important. The other question that I see here, it's regarding the current season and of drought. What I can say about it is of course, this drought, as we can see by the monitoring, is not well, it is a very severe drought, but in terms of forest fire, on the daily severity rating is not as high as 2017. But of course, in terms of drought, from the drought products that we use, and I think today should be available the evaluation by mid-March. Will tell us that we had, of course, still some drought, I'm sure. These 15 days of rain have, let's say, give us some air to breathe, because we went, let's say, we recovered 1 month to 2 months or 3 months. So we went back, let's say, in the year. So, but of course, it's something that we have to monitor. The forecast for the next weeks tells us that we should not have precipitation in the same regime as we did have. It is this frontal precipitation that is better. Of course, we'll have just showers, which are not as good for increasing the soil moisture. And in the long range, of course, there is a lot of uncertainty. There's still an idea that the spring should be hotter than usual and maybe drier than usual, but there is a lot of uncertainty still. So the models are not all pointing at the global models that have the information are not all pointing to the same scenarios. So it means there is a lot of uncertainty, and we'll just have to keep monitoring and adapt to what comes from the forecasts.
Thank you very much, Nuno. And now I think that we should close the webinar, and I'd like to say a couple of words. First of all, that we are very happy and proud of having had this webinar. It was, let's say, in a relatively short notice. In spite of that, we had a very large audience, and also the presentations were very good. I am sorry that we had only given 30 minutes for each presenter, because there are much more to be said about what each institution is doing. This webinar, let's say, in which we presented the case of the Portugal modification, Portugal institutions, is one, let's say, of course, one approach. It doesn't mean that we of the project, we endorse this system. We are now looking at the different systems that exist in Europe. Of course, for us in Portugal, we know this one better, and we know that this is being, if I can say so, a success case. Not everything was very linear, not everything is perfect, but I think that it was shown here that there is at least some road that is being traveled. And as has been mentioned, I think the great key for success is the fact that people are talking to each other, and the 6 persons, 5 persons that are participating, as was mentioned, they work together, they meet very often. And in these past years, in spite of COVID, I think it was, of course, a difficulty to promote some of the activities, but it was overcome by great effort and by diligence from the different institutions. And I think it's a good example also for us in the research to look, because as you can see, these institutions are already using products from research, are using new technologies, and in fire risk we have the intention to design and to build and to propose a conceptual framework of fire management, and this is something that has to be brought up from the ground. We will not invent anything new. We want to see what is happening and to propose. For this reason, we'll also propose similar webinars with other countries from Southern Europe and also from Northern Europe, to see how they approach this problem, to see if they have already also some strategy, if they are changing things, and from these lessons we intend to promote or to produce this system. Once again, I thank you for your participation, your institutions, and all those who attended, and also my colleagues that supported me in the organization of this webinar. I thank you for all the effort, and look forward to see you in the near initiative that we'll have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you, Professor, and all your team.
Today,